And today I want to talk about the Virgo full moon and eclipse, which is very on brand. Today I started my cycle. I'm a Virgo. It's considered a blood moon. I'm like, oh, I'm such a Virgo. um, what else? I want to give a disclaimer because I like to do these like full time, or not full time, full moon. Hey Boogie. Check-ins, but I am not an astrologer. I just like to pay attention to the transits and astrology to keep up with like a weather forecast of like just to know what's going on. But I am not an astrologer. I know the basics and I know enough to gauge how it is affecting me and just share from that. So I wanted to talk about a little bit of what we talked about last week as far as tuning into your body, emotional awareness, and moving towards oxytocin versus dopamine. As I have been navigating that and like diving deeper on moving towards oxytocin, it's starting to make more and more sense why, especially during this Mercury retrograde. And I think we are in very uncertain times collectively, but also I think internally. I think it is a macro situation. So what we can see externally with all the chaos of the world is also what's happening internally. And because we can't do anything about what's happening externally, I think we shift and change the world by focusing on ourselves and what we can change about ourselves. And that's how we really are able to see the change. I had made a little note. I was listening to something earlier and it said, your reality does not shape you, you shape reality. And so the more that we're looking at the world of thinking like everything's going to shit, which low-key it is, but it's more so like how am I contributing to what I'm experiencing in my life, in my circumstances. Hey Mimi. So the question of the day is, what timeline am I in? So for this Virgo full moon, yes, still tune into your body, still pay attention to your emotions like we talked about last week. But remember last week I said this Virgo full moon is going to give us some level of insight. Virgo likes to know things, but Virgo likes to scan. So think of it as a diagnostic check. So Virgo doesn't necessarily need the answers, but Virgo needs to have clarity. And yesterday I was sitting with, and I had made a comment in Lady of the House Live or her backup page that she had banned briefly, but saying like, I know I am in unfamiliar territory and I'm moving through uncertainty. And I did a workshop, what was it, last October, and it was in regards to uncertainty and how to navigate uncertainty with a level of ease. Because usually when we feel uncertain and unsure about something, it can be deeply triggering because it can make us go back into a time where we were uncertain in life. Typically, that's when we were children or teenage years, because that's when we are figuring life out and how to navigate life and learning how to regulate. And so it's a very uncertain time. And when we experience uncertainty in our adult life, we kind of get pulled back into that time period. And so, hey, United States of MJ. Hey, Naturally Rashida. And so I was thinking about that workshop. This is pertaining to what I'm talking about. We're talking about moving through uncertainty, but also doing a diagnostic check of what timeline am I in based off of how we feel. Because last week we talked about feeling over being so logical about everything, which Virgo likes logic, but right now we're focusing kind of on what we feel, which let me go back to the uncertainty. With uncertainty, when I did that workshop, I realized I don't necessarily need uncertainty. I don't think any of us, I don't necessarily need certainty. I don't think any of us need certainty because when we are uncertain, we are usually more open and receptive and more curious. And so the more uncertain, the more we can kind of get into our curiosity of exploring. But because as an adult, being uncertain and unsure is so triggering because we think we need to know. We think we have to be logical. And there are things that we need to be logical about. But if you have systems in place, it will help. So if you can go back into a time where, like, what did uncertainty feel like as a child? And think about what you needed. And so I'll give an example. When I did that workshop, I regressed to 13-year-old me. At 13, my mom and my dad split up for the second time. My mom left. We stayed with my dad. And so when my mom left, so did our stability, not financially, but like the cleanliness of our house, our eating habits, those type of things, as far as like structure of our house, left. And so I thought about it as like, if that's what I needed at 13 and that's part of what triggers my uncertainty, that's what I will focus on. Not so much of needing the answer of what I'm trying to figure out now, which at the time, what was I trying to figure out? It might have been about money, or I'm not really sure, but it doesn't matter. Whatever you're uncertain about, think about what can you be logical about. So because those are the things that I was missing in my childhood that made me uncertain, that's what I focused on. I focused on making nourishing meals, comfort meals mostly, because that was like once it started getting cold. Hey, Leisha Pisha. So I was making a lot of soups, a lot of like comfort meals, which were helpful. Last week I talked about meal planning, making sure my house was tidy, making sure I was doing things in a logical way, I just redirected the logic. And so we don't necessarily have to throw out our logic. If we're going to focus on oxytocin and our feelings, we just have to redirect it. We have to delegate it to a different area so that we can focus on how we feel. So before I started talking about uncertainty and like navigating uncertainty, I was talking about this Virgo full moon kind of being like a diagnostic check of what timeline am I in and what timeline do I want to be in. And so I wrote down a few signs to show like if you have already shifted the timeline, because usually if you have already shifted, that is what is giving you uncertainty, is that you are in unfamiliar territory. So that's the first pattern, or the first sign, is your familiar patterns no longer activate or hook you. So what I noticed, and I thought about this in terms of the last 90 days. So we have a Mercury retrograde every season. So, and it's usually like to transition into the next season, if I can remember it correctly. So at the end of this Mercury retrograde, literally the day it ends is spring forward. So think about this retrograde period as being a time to think about your patterns over the last 90 days and really set into motion shifting them. And so I want us to talk about how you'll know if you are in a new timeline. And so the first is familiar patterns no longer activating or hooking you. So think about how you react to certain situations. Do you react or do you respond? I have noticed in the last 90 days there has been a difference in how I respond, and it's because I don't respond right away. I will sit with something for a few days to make sure I know how I feel about it, because usually we react based off of impulse, not necessarily our emotion. Yes, we are feeling emotional at the time and we are feeling activated, but you are reacting based off of what emotion feels comfortable being expressed at the time. But there may be something underlying that. So we talked about that a little bit last week of okay, you might be angry about something, and so you could angry clean, or you could go off on somebody or what have you, but underneath that anger, what is also there? What triggered the anger? Was it that hit a abandonment wound? I felt rejected. I felt isolated or lonely. I felt neglected. Whatever it may have been, there's something underneath that is requiring you to really feel through that. And if you only react through the anger, you'll miss the chance to really process and sit with what is truly coming up for you. And it's not just the anger. It's just maybe that's the emotion you're comfortable with. That may be your home emotion that you know how to express. And so start to pay attention. Am I responding or am I reacting? Because response, you can only really respond when you know how you feel. So I usually will give myself 3 days because 3 days is enough time to kind of gauge how you feel, but it is also enough time to allow the process of the emotion to really get to the root of it. So the first day may be anger. The next day may be sadness. Thank you, Leisha Peacha. The next day may be grief. And so by the third day, you'll have a more clear understanding of truly how you feel so that you can express it. And 2, I give myself 3 days to fully feel it. So like if I'm sad about something, I will allow myself to fully be sad. So all I was saying I was doing in terms of logic, if I don't feel like cleaning for 3 days, I'm just not going to clean for 3 days. If I don't feel like exercising, I want to eat like shit for 3 days, I'll give myself 3 days. But by the end of that third day, going into the fourth day, that's my day to like, all right, get it together. What do we need to know? What information did we gather from these 3 days so that we can move forward? Just try not to let it prolong into the fourth day, because then that turns into like you really being in a funk, versus if you allow yourself those 3 days, that's fairly quickly. And once you get into that rhythm of this is how you sit with your emotions, it may not take three days for you to get to that conclusion. Like just how I went Lady of the House live Saturday, and she helped me like process some of the things that I was going through Saturday. And had I not had the opportunity to process, I probably wouldn't have got to it that quickly. Because really what I talked about in our live, it was just how I woke up feeling, because I went out Friday night. That's how I woke up feeling and what I was thinking about. So it might have taken me till probably today or yesterday to come to that conclusion, but because you guys held space for me, I was able to process it. By the end of the day, I was good. So like the more that you get used to diving deeper, talking about how you feel, getting to the root of what it is that you feel, the process gets quicker too. So that's another reason why oxytocin is going to be your saving grace over dopamine, because dopamine is going to be what you use when you are reacting. Dopamine will give you that initial satisfaction of cussing somebody out. Dev Simone, do you do coaching? I won't say I do coaching, but I do one-on-ones, I guess, or like one-on-one calls. But I wouldn't say I do coaching. I guess I'm a little like lady of the house in that way, that coaching kind of feels a little icky to me, but because I like to give people information and then you go sit with that, you do the work, and then after you do the work, if you want to come back and do another one-on-one, cool, I'm fine with that. But like coaching programs and stuff like that, or even mentoring, I've done before and I didn't care for it. But going back to what I was saying, reasons why oxytocin over dopamine is necessary, because oxytocin is going to be what you use when you cuss somebody out, and you get that initial like activation of like it felt good to cuss them out and you said what you needed to say, even if it wasn't in a way that was productive or leaves room to maybe repair, because in the moment you may be frustrated or mad at somebody, but it may also be a relationship you still want. So like you don't want to react in a way that you can't come back from. Instead, give yourself enough time and space to respond. And that's where the oxytocin come in. So in those 3 days that you're giving yourself enough time and space to process how you feel, that's also where you could be doing things that will give you oxytocin. So that will kind of alleviate the emotion as well. So doing things that bring you deeper into connection with yourself or others for that matter, because oxytocin is really just like a love hormone. It just allows you to feel connected and feel loved. And so even if you don't have community or people in your life that can offer you oxytocin in that way, some things that help are like you doing body massages. I talked about doing nice baths. Those are probably like my top two. In my baths, I like to put oil, or even if you do herbal bath, to kind of have like a sensory experience to where you could feel the herbs, you can feel the oil in the water. Another thing that helps, because it feels like a hug, is a weighted blanket. I have a weighted blanket. So when I am feeling sad or I'm processing like a difficult emotion, those are like my top 3 things that I'll use that I feel like boost my oxytocin. This is going into the second sign that you're in a new timeline. So the first, going over it again, is familiar patterns are no longer activating you. You can respond versus react. The second is your body leads before your mind. So decisions happen faster with less mental debate. Like how I was talking about Saturday, I was able to process that a lot quicker because I didn't have to be in a place of like second guessing how I felt or making myself feel bad, because you guys held space for me. So usually you'll know you're in a new timeline because either you could do that for yourself or you have gained community or partnership in a way that is supporting you in that way. So if you can start to make decisions faster because you are able to mentally process, it will help you. And that also brings me to, sometimes we are stuck between timelines and kind of in a void period because we won't decide that we're ready to be in this new timeline, or because we don't know the new timeline is even available to us. And so, yes, you know you're not necessarily where you were, but you don't know where you're going, or you don't know where you are now. And so these signs will also kind of help that, like, okay, I'm in a new timeline and I need to start creating the momentum to move forward to what I actually want to experience in this new timeline. And that brings me to, I heard a creator on here say this. I don't remember who it was. I'm sorry. But they were saying being ready is not a feeling. It's a decision. And you can only really make a decision to be ready if you are giving yourself permission to be ready. And so that is where you would feel safe enough in your body to say, I'm ready to be in this new timeline. And that's also how you'll know, because you'll feel it in your body before your mind make up all these different scenarios of like second guessing and self-sabotage and imposter syndrome. Instead, you'll be able to act on it more freely because you'll feel ready. And you'll be able to decide from that. The third sign is you feel early instead of late. So you start to sense things before they happen. You don't need logical reasons to do things. So, hey, Mahogany. When it comes to this, I think this is more so in relating to people and relationships. You no longer need a valid reason to cut somebody off or to leave somebody alone or to leave a job or to move or to do all these things. This goes back to being in your body, feeling versus needing to know. Sometimes you're not going to have a logical reason why. And sometimes you can stay stuck in a previous timeline because you want to know why so bad. You don't need to know why somebody is being harmful. Do you feel harmed? That's enough. And I think once you start to be able to trust yourself and trust how you feel, because that's really what it boils down to. Do you trust how you feel? And the only way you will start to really be able to trust how you feel is if you also take care of yourself. So going back to how piecing this back into oxytocin, if you are feeding yourself your own oxytocin, you will also start to feel safe. And safety also leads to deeper self-trust, which also leads to not needing to know everything. Because even if something did happen, you leave too early, some shit fall apart, you in this new timeline, you can't sustain it, you shit fall apart. If you trust yourself enough to recover, it'll be okay. At this point in my life, I don't really care too much about what happens outside of like me and my kids. As long as we're together, we're good. I feel like I can know that I will get through it. I've been through enough to know even if something difficult happens, I trust myself to do the work. I trust myself to sit with how I feel. I trust myself to pour into myself enough to know that I can recover from anything at this point. And so if you have that level of trust, you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know that you are 100% right. And going back to responding, overreacting, you won't need to respond to everything. You won't need to react. You could leave things as they are. You could allow people to misunderstand you. You can allow people to say what they want about you and it not affect you, because as long as you trust you, as long as you fuck with you, as long as you love you, there will be other people who will be able to match that. And I think a lot of people talk about like, okay, love yourself, trust yourself, while also saying, you know, you need community. So yes, both are true, but I think the community that you gain when you love yourself also have that in common. That like you really can't be in a relationship with other people that don't love themselves. It will show very quickly. Because it will be too triggering. So yes, do the work of doing all that for yourself, but also be okay about the relationships that fall apart because of it. And knowing that there will be a replacement. And usually it's a better upgrade. So not needing to know everything in order to leave a space. Now 4 is unraveling or spiraling is replaced with a pause. So going back to the 3 day, my 3 day rule of allowing myself to spiral ultimately for 3 days. And I think that comes back to like the whole uncertainty. I have had to live in very uncertain times for the past 3 years that I know even if I don't have all of the information I need and I don't have all the clarity, I know it will come. I trust my process enough that it will come, and that if I don't have it right now, I don't need it. And so to pause and to not rush the clarity, instead allow it to arrive, which I know is hard because pausing requires us to sit still, and usually if we are used to being busy, we're used to rushing. That is also because it feeds us dopamine. And so if we are leaning more towards oxytocin, we're going to have to slow down and allow for information, clarity, money, love to come inward, to come to us, versus thinking that we got to rush out to go get it, or to constantly be in this yearning state. Sometimes it takes for you to like pause and like, do I actually have everything that I need? Leisha Pisha, what could you scan in your environment and your circumstances of you having what you need right now? Something that really, really helped me, and this was recently, I think like January, was I was constantly having to affirm, if I don't have it yet, I don't need it yet. If I don't have it yet, I don't need it yet. I know that is very hard, and I'm saying this from experience. It is hard, but if I don't have it yet, I don't need it yet. So what could I be focused on instead? What would allow me to pause? And usually that is some level of connection. So that's where can you find oxytocin in your life? These are questions like, if you gonna journal, ask yourself questions. Don't just journal, oh, this is how I'm feeling, this is the type of day I had, this what happened to me when I was 8. Those things are great to express them, to get them out. But if you gonna journal, ask yourself questions, because our brains are wired to respond. Our brains are literal computers. It wants to give you an answer to the question you ask, even if you got to look at it as you asking God a question. Ask the question and keep writing. You will get an answer. And for Leisha Pisha, I would say do that. Ask yourself, how can you find oxytocin now? If nothing changed, if none of your circumstances change right now, where can you find oxytocin? Start doing whatever comes up, and I can guarantee you will get an answer. It may not be the answer you're looking for, but you will get an answer. Because that's also part of the pause, is having to surrender what we think we want. You may want an outcome that may not even be in your greatest favor. It may be something better for you. So just because I got a sense of, I think, a little bit of what you're talking about. If you're waiting for a response for a place, pause, because there may be some other place that comes in. There may be another opportunity. Dev Simone, I'm struggling with community, being long distance, and falling out with people here. Girl, we in the same boat. This is why I'm so grateful for the platform and the community at Lady of the House, because I feel like I came into that community right on time. So if you remind me, I will tag you on her platform. I feel like if you're not resonating with what I'm talking about, you may also resonate with her platform. I am long distance from my family, kind of, because my mom is in the same state, but we're also not close. And I didn't fill out what all of my family, and I don't really have like friends here, but I have been here in Texas for 3 years. I'm originally from California. I moved here in very unfavorable circumstances. It was more so a surrender moment of like, I don't want to move to Texas, but I feel like I needed to because that's where all the arrows were leading to. So kind of like what I was just telling Alicia, please hold off. Because there may be an answer coming in, even if you don't like the answer. But when I look back in retrospect of how I got here, so divine. I would not have been able to do the internal work. I wouldn't be on here talking to y'all. And if I was, I would be talking about something totally different and probably not as useful. Had I not said yes to that. And so I can only really talk from experience. So if I'm ever on here talking, you ever see any of my posts, it's because it has happened in my own life. I can talk, teach, or guide about things that I don't know anything about, which is mainly why I don't work with men. Or my platform is not also talking to men because I'm not a man. I don't know what to tell you, sir. Okay, going to number 5. You grieve without regression. You grieve without regression. You grieve what has been lost, never received, or even tolerated, but you don't want to go back. You are grieving, but you're also saying, absolutely the fuck not. So, the friendships, the family, the lovers, the hometown even, old job, whatever it may be, you grieve it, you miss it. You miss it at one point being comfortable. But you're also like, I will never experience that again. No, thank you. I would rather grieve that than to put myself back in that position. So, only we were talking about signs that you are in a new timeline. And so the grief comment is like, you can grieve without feeling like you need to go back. That's the sign that you are in a new timeline and you're establishing a new pattern, that you are more willing to sit with the grief over something familiar. And lastly, safety becomes your anchor. And I think safety becomes your anchor because now you are the safety. You are the safe house. You trust yourself to be able to bounce back. You trust yourself to feel what you need to feel. You trust yourself to feel the grief, to process it, to sit with it. You trust yourself to pause. And so if you trust yourself, you can kind of navigate anything. Because at that point, you are what is establishing the safety. You're not reliant on something or anyone else to. And so going back to the oxytocin versus dopamine, dopamine is external. Dopamine is something externally that is soothing you and your mind. Because the mind it goes off of perception. So if I could see this as comforting, then I think it's comforting, but it may not feel comforting. So the mind and the body are in two different places. People addicted to substances, in the mind, they feel like they need that substance because it is filling a void and creating some level of comfort and soothing them in a way. And it is, but it is also damaging their body. So oxytocin is always going to help in transitioning from a dopamine dependency, an addiction, to a level of connection. And this goes for anything. Substance abuse counselors teach this. The antidote to addiction is connection. It's love. Most people in recovery are because they don't have love in their life. Oh yeah, that's so good. I tend to avoid hard or things that don't have 100% clarity. So at the beginning of the live, we were talking about needing certainty. So like to need 100% clarity, that means you are pausing until you have all of the information you need in order to make a calculated decision. When you don't need 100% certainty, you may need some level of awareness. You may need you do need some insight. But this is where the connection and oxytocin can lead the way, because it allows you to feel in your body where you are being called to. You can feel what pleasure and joy and happiness, or even you can feel what is right for you. Going back to me moving here to Texas, I did not want to move here. I knew in my body that was the right choice. Mentally, no. Because mentally, I was thinking about comfort. I was thinking, I'm going to leave everything I know. So, you got to get out of what is comfortable. And I think as human beings, we want comfort. It's natural to want comfort. But I don't think you necessarily need comfort if you have connection. And once you start to really connect with yourself, it allows for you to have deeper connections with other people too. What y'all in here talking about? I've been your business. Y'all in my business because I'm sharing my experience, and hopefully it's helpful to y'all. Comfort versus connection, yeah. And this has really sent me into a rabbit hole, and I made a post about this. Thank you, Mahogany. That like once you start to lean more towards connection versus comfort, it will change your perception of life. It will change your relationships. It will change your relationship with yourself. It will change your relationship to love and how you see love. Because the relationships that are based in comfort more than likely are based in survival. So there's a level of codependency there of like, we need to keep each other comfortable and regulated, and this is how we're going to survive. But once you are able to like regulate yourself, now you want connection. Now you want a level of emotional intimacy in depth. that those relationships will not be able to meet you at, because they are focused on comfort. And so you're not going to have the things that you are familiar with anymore. So this is all a part of, like, now being in a new timeline. In a new timeline, you have to be open and willing to start being curious about what that looks like in this new timeline. You are going to have to start creating the experiences because you are able to. Once you start regulating yourself, once you feel safe with yourself, once you become the safe house for yourself, you don't necessarily need to guard yourself in the same ways. And so you